basic rules you need to follow in this GD session. First of all, any one of you must come forward voluntarily to choose a topic from these envelopes. Second, you will be given approximately 3 minutes to present and write your ideas among that topic. And lastly, you will have only 10 minutes to discuss the topic among yourself.
Our topic is formal education tends to restrain your mind rather than set them free. I'd like to say it once again. Formal education tends to restrain your mind rather than set them free.
Now you have 3 minutes to prepare on the given topic. Please, one of you start the discussion session.
Formal education obviously restrains our mind as it makes us follow certain kinds of syllabus in school, as we can see that when a child is constrained into a school, then he tends to act as a good student in front of his maths teacher by copying the solution written in the board and acting a good student in front of his teacher rather than finding the solution for himself.
Yes, I do agree with you to some extent. Actually, you should not forget that you are living in a society that has many constraints. Actually, there are rules and regulations in formal education as well. But the main purpose of doing so is not to keep your mind restrained and structured. The main purpose is to set your mind free actually and to think more clearly and logically. As I would like to remember what Merriam-Webster says. He says that to educate or teach is to lead to knowledge, and I believe that knowledge accumulation is the base of any free mind.
I agree with the statement of Mr. Line. The status of formal education is not perfect and need improvement, but that does not mean that we can do away from the concept of formal education. As the saying is that we have to learn to walk before we run. So let's admit that we all have the formal educations, and it helps us to borrow the knowledge. And we are here today in this GD due to the result of formal education.
Sorry to interrupt Mr. Suraj, but as told earlier, formal education is conducted within structured constraint, so this limits the creativity of the students since they cannot think out of the box. And as I see lots of participants taking the help of quotation, so in this context I would like to quote a statement which states that formal education is a walk through zoo, whereas informal knowledge is a walk through savannah.
I'm not against specialization, but beyond, it is not sufficient. Like, if you take an example of a civil engineer who is designing and constructing a bridge, needs to know how the bridge will affect the trade between two places, and for that, he needs specific knowledge which only the book cannot provide.
I do not agree with Jasmine's point. That's a given example of civil engineer and the bridge that he constructed. To construct a bridge, the basic education or the basic knowledge we want, that is given by formal education, as the theories are the foundation of any creativity or innovation. I am against the topic that formal education tends to restrain our mind.
I strongly support Rajana's opinion that it provides a basic framework and foundation in which creativity flourishes. Actually, it helps to bring our innate talent outside and help us realize the true potential. I would like to cite an example. Do you guys think that Mark Zuckerberg would have created the Facebook without getting knowledge from formal education? And do you guys think that Bill Gates would have also created Microsoft without getting education from formal education? The chance is very much low. So the formal education from where they get, it had already prepared their mind with certain sort of knowledge and skill. So what I actually think is it sets your mind free and make you realize your true potential.
In my opinion, formal education set the wall around the students through which they cannot see further and they can think out of the box. So, in my opinion, is that formal education always rests on our mind rather than setting them free.
You made a very good point, Samyukta, but if we see today's schools and universities, they do not only constrain the student mind around the curriculum, but they also provide a base to understand for the student to understand what their interest is in. Like they provide courses of like dramas or music or even arts and designing. So school and college or formal education also provide the opportunities for the students to know what their interest is in and flourish their creativity. We can also see that countries where people are more educated tend to produce higher level of innovation.
Yeah, it's a good and welcoming statement that you made, Rachna. But we favor the education system that is more composed of unstructured and uncontrolled to some extent, that is informal education. But what the reality is that the more emphasis is paid on the formal education and negligible emphasis is there on informal education. So we propose an education system that is more focused on informal education and without neglecting the formal education as well.
We can see that there are lots of graduates who has got a degree but are unemployed. What's the reason behind that? Have you ever wondered? The reason is though, they have got the degree but they lack skills and creativity to work in the real world, which lacks in our formal education system. It kills our imagination.
But my friend, imagination merely is not important. It should be supported with certain skills and knowledge. Like for example, Leonardo had long before came up with the idea of soaring something into the skies. But after centuries, Wright brothers came up with certain skills and ideas and make it real. So what I mean from this example is that you should have at least the basic mechanisms of how things really work. So the idea needed to accomplish a particular task, the skills you learn through formal education.
Okay, my friend Line made a very good point. I think purpose of formal education is educating people in a systematic way. It does not mean that it will hold back people's mind. Rather than restraining the mind, it will set the mind free. I think formal education is indispensable to translate imaginative thought to the real world. Person needs formal education so that the idea that come out are practical, not naive. Just take an example. If you don't know what has been done in the particular field, to innovate a new thing, you need to know what else has been done in that particular field, or what innovation has been made in that particular field.
Do you think that such creativity flourishes in a pressured mind which says you can do this and you can't do this? I think you guys are misguided by the fact that success you talked about are largely the product of the informal way of living that they have lived through. What the formal education did was just stick to a problem, stick to a road, stick to a scenario that just ruined the potentiality.
I agree with this statement of Samyukta, and further what I want to add is that if you see the condition of education in the context of Nepal, so the education system of Nepal mainly focuses on parrot learning, results, exam results, assignments. Beside this, it pressurizes on a student to mug up the things rather than set them free to understand the material themselves. Beside this, this sort of education system is not going to develop or boost up the creativity and the knowledge of the student. So, if you see the education system of Norway, which pays more focus on informal education, although without totally neglecting informal education. So, what I would like to say is that, so we should take some lessons from the Norway and should pay more focus on informal education as well as accepting some of the part of or good feature of formal education.
But formal education does not always mean assignment, exam pressures, and so on. But it is also a system that teaches students about time management, discipline, and it teaches how to use the learned skill in the practical life. And also, it is extremely difficult to be creative in any field that you are totally unaware about. If you see any genius or any creative person, they have some knowledge or they are a type of expert in their field in which they are creative or innovative. Without knowing or without being familiar with the work done by others, how do you know that you are creative or your ideas are the new one?
I want to add some point regarding the statement made by Rasana. First, at the initial stage of their life, children ought to be aware of their life and themselves, and they must learn to be sociable. So, this can happen only in the formal education system. Secondly, formal education teaches a student how to be disciplined and act accordingly. For instance, like doing homework can be burden initially, but it eventually installs the quality of respect in them and also request of doing the activities. So this will ultimately help them to be creative and be successful in their life.
The pressure exerted by the importance of formal education is such that there is little or no time left for anyone to allow their minds to be free and to think of something outside the realms of the formal education. Students are enforced to follow certain resources to learn and memorize the content, which does not let their creativity blossom.
I agree with Jasmine. Like we can see that some of the educators focuses more on higher grades, and they forces students to obtain higher marks. And as a result, a lot of dull students gets higher grades who are merely the recorder of exam tactics, which really kills the creativity. And for a big breakthrough, creativity is a must.
Yes, I strongly support that creativity is very much important in one's life. But creativity without basic framework, creativity without basic foundation will lead to the ideas which are really beautiful in mind, but they are rarely implementable. Like as once Confucius said, learning without thinking is labor lost, and thinking without learning is petty loss. Meaning that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Your mind is bounded with certain limitations, certain knowledge, and with that limited sort of knowledge, you cannot think big, you cannot think more realistic, and you can think more practical.
If creativity means having original ideas that are useful, it can also be related to any activities in school or any subject or any curriculums. For starters, all the creative person or the genius went to school at a time or had the formal education in their life.
With this kind of fact and degree-oriented students joining the workforce, it might happen that the overall knowledge and competency in the world degrades, and there will be no competitions and no improvement in anything in general sense. All of us will be nothing but a mere victim of self-inflicted problems, and nobody ready to solve those problems because there are no free thinkers left.
Many of my friends made the agreement that formal education will stop creativity and stop students from thinking out of box. But in my view, students can receive formal educations and still be creative. Like formal educations open up the multiple pathway which a student can consider to pursue, and which ultimately results at bringing out an innate talent of the students in the long run, which will ultimately help to realize their true potential. Through formal education, a student can understand fact, figures, and concept on whole. So formal education is essential to make a student aware of the environment, being disciplined, and thinking out of box.
Almost your time is over. Now one of you please voluntarily conclude the session.
So from this discussion today, we have come to the conclusion that we cannot ignore the fact that formal education instills knowledge and skill in us that help us realize our true potential, that help us to think more realistic rather than just become more imaginary. But the rigid curriculum restricts our mind to think beyond the horizon. Thus, rather than ignoring the importance of formal education, an adjustment to its rigidity is demanded.